The Su-75 Checkmate was supposed to be Russia's answer to the American F-35, a next-generation stealth fighter meant to rival the best in the world. But here's the problem. The aircraft still can't fly. Despite years of development and bold promises, the Checkmate remains grounded, a technological showcase with no substance, a project that perfectly illustrates the growing difficulties of Russia's military industry. Today, we're going to break this story down, from its spectacular unveiling in 2021 to its current status as a resounding failure. How could a program with so much promise fail so spectacularly? Stay with us, because this analysis reveals far more than the problems of a single aircraft. Let's go back to 2021, the MAX Air Show in Zhukovsky near Moscow. This event has always been a showcase for Russian aviation innovation. In 1999, it was where the Su-37, with its forward-swept wings, was revealed. In 2011, it was the prototype of the Su-57, a fifth-generation fighter now considered among the best in the world. For the Su-75, Russian authorities spared no expense. $30 million were spent on initial marketing alone. Hollywood-style promotional videos, dramatic teasers, and even a surreal detail, a perfume inspired by the aircraft, created from samples of cockpit metal alloys, combined with notes of juniper, patchouli, and oak moss. Vladimir Putin himself attended the unveiling. Manufacturers proudly announced that the first flight would take place in 2023, with serial production and deliveries planned for 2026. On paper, the Su-75 looked impressive. Designed as a more compact and affordable version of the Su-57, it was to be powered by a single engine, a variant of the Saturn AL-51F1. This same engine equips the improved version of the Su-57, the Su-57M. The announced performance figures were promising: a top speed between Mach 1.8 and Mach 2, a range of 3,000 kilometers, and a payload capacity of 7,400 kilograms. As a stealth fighter, the Su-75's design incorporated features intended to minimize its radar signature: a diverterless supersonic air intake, a V-tail, and internal weapons bays. The U-shaped air intake was supposed to give it a smaller radar cross-section than its predecessor, the Su-57. Experts estimated that it could engage enemy aircraft at altitudes of at least 12,000 meters. Sukhoi touted its artificial intelligence capabilities, its powerful automatic cannon, and its ability to carry up to 5 missiles in its internal bays.
Officials even talked about future versions, an unmanned variant or a two-seat version. But the detail that truly changed the game was its single engine. This was a major contrast with other Russian fighters, which have used twin-engine configurations since the 1980s. This feature addressed a key problem for Russian exports. Many countries prefer single-engine aircraft, which are almost always less expensive. Russian officials did not hide their enthusiasm. Yuri Borisov, former deputy prime minister, expressed hopes of selling the Su-75 to India, Vietnam, and several African countries. He expected to receive significant orders quickly. Denis Manturov, former Minister of Trade, claimed that the Checkmate would seriously compete with the American F-35 Lightning II and other leading fighters. His statement was clear: we must join the nations that sell this type of aircraft. Putin himself was enthusiastic. What we saw today in Zhukovsky demonstrates that Russian aviation has great potential for development and that our aerospace is expensive aircraft. If a single plane is damaged or destroyed by a kamikaze drone, the financial losses are, and there are specific deadlines, so God willing, it should happen fairly soon. Meanwhile, Russia continues to display non-flying models at annual air shows. The 2025 Dubai Air Show, for example, once again featured a prototype Su-75 airframe. Sergei Chemezov, CEO of Rostec, claimed that the prototype is almost at the flight testing stage. He continued in an optimistic tone, suggesting that the aircraft will be in demand once development moves to the next phase. But for now, all of this is just hot air. No matter what Kremlin or industry officials say or claim, the facts are clear. The Checkmate, in its current form, has no military value. It is an aircraft that cannot fly, an immense source of embarrassment for its manufacturers and for the Russian military industry as a whole. It joins the ranks of other failed projects, such as the T-14 Armata tank, once touted as one of the best ever built, but ultimately proving too expensive and difficult to deploy in Ukraine, or the Tupolev Pakda stealth bomber, stuck in development hell for decades.
How and why did this project turn into such a disaster, filled with false starts and broken promises? The answer can be summed up in a single word: war. In 2021, when the Su-75 was unveiled, Russia had not yet invaded Ukraine. The future seemed relatively promising. There were no obvious obstacles threatening the development of this sophisticated new fighter. That is one of the reasons industry officials appeared so confident about its first flight. Then 2022 arrived. Putin gave the order to invade Ukraine, and the rest is history. From that point on, even high-profile military projects like this one were pushed into the background. The war cannibalized Russia's aerospace capacity. Resources that had previously been allocated to the development of advanced platforms and innovations, such as the Su-75 Checkmate, were suddenly reassigned. The country was far more concerned with keeping its existing aircraft flying and combat-ready, including aging Soviet-era fighters and bombers, than with dedicating time, money, and resources to building entirely new aircraft. Even factories that could have been used to manufacture next-generation aircraft components were suddenly tasked with repairing decades-old damaged aircraft or designing new upgrades to make them more effective in attacks against Ukraine. They no longer had the capacity to work on a stealth fighter that might still require years of prototyping before it could even be officially introduced into service. Budgets, too, could no longer cover the rising development costs of the Su-75. New aircraft must undergo extensive and expensive flight testing. The Kremlin naturally preferred to devote its funds to other more urgent priorities, producing drones, glide bombs, and missiles, paying personnel salaries, and so on. These problems have only worsened over time. International sanctions have made it nearly impossible for Russia to acquire or produce the critical components needed to continue developing its next-generation fighter: precision machine tools, semiconductors, and other elements vital to the advanced avionics a system like the Su-75 would inevitably require. These sanctions are likely to grow stronger and more comprehensive over time, making imports and exports even harder for the Kremlin to manage, while dealing further devastating blows to the Russian economy, already on its knees under the enormous wartime spending. The aircraft's manufacturers have not helped the situation either. According to reports, United Aircraft Corporation tasked designers with working simultaneously on both manned and unmanned versions of the Su-75. That effectively doubled their workload.
Creating an unmanned combat aircraft is incredibly difficult. No such aircraft has yet been used in real combat conditions. The teams working on the Checkmate were therefore given an almost impossible workload. Not only did they have to build a brand new fighter from scratch under extremely tight budgetary and resource constraints, but they also had to design an autonomous flight system, a world first. It would have been far more sensible to focus first on completing a manned version of the Su-75 and getting it into the air before beginning work on an unmanned variant. But as history has shown, Russia rarely does things in a sensible way. Now it is paying the price. And while officials continue to claim that the first flight is only months away, and that other countries are eager to spend their money on batches of checkmates for their own air forces, there is little evidence to support these assertions. At the moment, there are no official export orders for the Su-75, and that is understandable. No country would want to invest tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in aircraft that have not even proven they can take off. There certainly appeared to be some interest in the early days, particularly from countries such as India, Vietnam, and the United Arab Emirates. But that interest seems to have cooled over time, as those same nations have become increasingly aware of Russia's manufacturing difficulties and technological shortcomings. The world has also watched Russia's military performance in Ukraine. Many observers have expressed a mix of shock and disappointment at what they have seen. When the war began, it was widely assumed that thanks to its much larger, stronger, and more experienced military, combined with vast stocks of Soviet-era equipment and advanced innovations, Russia would easily crush any Ukrainian resistance and move toward a rapid, decisive victory. As we now know, that did not happen. Instead, Russian forces have struggled for several years, suffering dramatic losses on land, at sea, and in the air. Its reputation as one of the world's most formidable military superpowers has been shattered. Its tanks, aircraft, air defenses, and other equipment, supposedly among the best aircraft, as Western sanctions continue